North American accounts of the giant skeletons that were found in the Ohio and Pennsylvania Valley. I'm talking everything from 10 to 12 foot tall guys found in copper armor. And the more I investigated, I found out it was a worldwide situation where we're talking some really big skeletons, all the way up to 36 feet tall.
If we only had basketball then, huh?
Well, I can tell you this, when some of these guys, some of the British giants, for instance, one guy specifically, listen to this, a guy by the name of William Joyce in the late 1800s, he could lift a ton dead weight, in other words, 2,000 pounds. And that you're only talking about a guy that was 8 feet tall. So I think the situation that most people find in history is there are too many question marks. And when you're looking at the temples of the world, and you're looking at all of the, what would you say, the answers that are out there, but seemingly are, swept under the rug, I think it becomes apparent that for some reason someone doesn't want the issue of giants brought up.
Do giants exist? Now, some will tell you, no, of course they don't exist. They'll tell you that there is no evidence. They'll even discount whatever stories you may have heard, whatever things you have seen. And what's interesting is if you look into this more deeply, there's actually a lot of proof that they do exist. All right? And we're going to go over some of that here. I wanted to also show you this first, though. You may know what this website is. Might have seen it a few times. They're well known for allegedly giving you the truth. But in reality, actually, the guy who owns it has divorced his wife, and it was because he was doing stuff behind her back. All right? And there's literally one man running this website. One man. He's the bastion of truth. He's going to tell you what the truth is, always. And he has like a couple workers who write articles. That's it. Literally one person. And for some reason, we're supposed to trust them, right? I don't think so. So they do this story here. Did these guys take out a giant? You may have seen this story. We're going to go over a number of things here, a lot of different things. I just wanted to cover this first. Of course, they say it's not true, right? But what is the reason they give for it not being true? We do not have any record or information about a member taking out a giant in Kandahar. That's their proof that it's not true, right? But literally, they reference a video which actually has two eyewitnesses, or actually has, I think it's like 3 people who testify about the story. Okay, so here's one of them. I'm going to play this one first, and then I'm going to play the other one as well. Okay.
Back to the base, and we started hearing this rumor about a unit that killed this, what they started calling this really tall person. At first I didn't think anything of it, and then come to find out that the person that they killed actually was 3 times the size of a man, had extra digits on their hand and digits on their feet, and had red hair, and a special unit had come in and wanted this.
All right, so you can see there, this is one man who had heard the story while he was back on base, okay? But we have this guy who is actually part of the group that took him out, all right? Let me play this real quick. Now, if they're telling you on this other website that they have no information whatsoever, when that's not even true. It's not true at all. They literally reference a video that shows you information, okay? It's just kind of funny how they do that.
Row mines, laying down fire, and I start firing. He skewers Dan. He's now got him on this pike. It went through him. He's still got him, and he's coming after more. We all just clicked in. I don't know what it was, but I remember.
All right, he goes in and he talks about how it takes 30 seconds. All of them focused on him. They're focused on him and trying to take him out for 30 seconds, and the guy's still moving. So it took that long. And of course, some other group comes in and takes this giant to another place. They don't know where. Let me play this here.
This is sounding longer than it took. We're talking 30 seconds.
So, you know, this is a modern day story about one, and it's from eyewitnesses, but of course, it's not true. That's what they tell you. And, here's an article that covers it more here. Huge hominoid allegedly encountered by a group on a mountainside in Afghanistan said they had stood about 13 feet in height, weighing in excess of 1,000 pounds. So this is just one example, right? And actually, there's many examples. Here's an interesting search you can do. Still, to this day on Google, I don't know how long you'll be able to do this, but I've already noticed lots of searches have changed their results. If you do a search just on the regular Google, not on the images, you'll have a hard time finding information on this type of stuff. I mean, it's still there, don't get me wrong, but it's like been pushed down, and they push all these trusted sources to the top, right? Which basically push whatever they want you to think, right? Because they got to program you. That's according to these documents that came out for diagram, and it says program people right on it. So they want to program you to think a certain way. But if you go look at this, you'll see there's a number of clippings from various newspapers. In the past, like in the 1800s and late 1700s, 1800s, and even 1900s, you'll see all these different, all around the country, all around America, 11 feet tall, 10 feet tall, just all manner of these different articles. And these were in trusted news papers. We're talking like, any of the main ones you see today, like New York Times and stuff that had these published. All right. So we're talking trusted sources, allegedly, right? And they got all these stories in these newspapers from the past. You see, there's like a ton. And I remember there's like at least 100 of them you can easily find on here. And, it could be 9 foot, 10 foot, 11 foot tall. And these guys encountered a guy who was 13 to 15 foot tall. So, and there's stories of ones that were even 30 foot tall skeletons that were found in like France. There's like two of them. I think one was in France and one was like in Afghanistan or something that was really tall, like 30 foot or something. So they've found these things, but it was a long time ago when they found them. And what's interesting is even if you look at these medieval historical books, like the ones from when they went to the Incas and Aztecs in South America and they first encountered them, the conquistadors, they had all these stories of seeing giant skeletons and skulls, and the skull being like this big, like literally 5 foot from the eye socket inward, like really huge skulls they found. And they even had a cave where there was like 3 giants on thrones inside the cave. And this is all documented in historical books. We were talking about professional historians back then, okay, writing these things. But of course, today, they don't ever show you these primary sources from these original historians that were there at that time frame. They rewrite history to avoid these topics, and they just assume this stuff is myth and fake, even though it was written literally in the 1600s, in the 1700s, things like the late 1600s. They have these old historical books, and they say they basically just discount anything they don't believe that doesn't fit whatever they believe. So they never tell you about any of this stuff. And I had a video showing all this kind of stuff in the past. So there's a lot of things like this. And then, recently, this just came out a day ago. Mystery pointy linked skulls. Discovery sheds new light on strange ancient practices. And they found these skulls. And what's interesting, not all of these have anything to do with giants. Sometimes what it is humans are actually trying to mimic, these humans from the past are trying to mimic the look of some of these giants. Because some of the giants did have skulls like this, especially in Egypt. Some of them had skulls like this. So they would actually try to mimic it. What's really strange about this story, though, if you read it, is that they did DNA analysis on 2 different skulls that were shaped within the same area. Okay? They were found in Croatia. They were found in the same place, both of them with different shaped skulls, and the DNA said they were from completely different places. Okay? One shows that it West Euro-Asian associated ancestry, and the other one has East Asian ancestry. So that's a little strange, you know. So that's another example right there. Then, you know, there was a recent interview on Zen Garcia's channel. I've been on his channel, and I think I'll probably be on his channel in the near future again. He covers a lot of interesting topics, and I'm actually watching this from one of my, I have 4 accounts that I watch videos from. I didn't even know I wasn't, maybe I got unsubscribed from him. I don't know what happened there, but he also has another channel. One's Zen Garcia, the other one is, what was the other one called? I'm trying to remember offhand. My mind's blurring right now. Let me see here. Maybe, yeah, Endeavor Freedom. That's the other one. So he has some really interesting videos, but again, his channel also is being pushed down. It's very obvious to me because he used to get a lot more views, and they're pushing his channel down just like they're doing to mine. But he has some really amazing videos, this one especially. He's interviewing a man who's an archaeologist, Joe Taylor. And what's interesting, though, is if you listen to him, he has some really interesting stuff that he covers here. And they have a museum, right? They have a museum. They do the whole 9 years. They go do archaeological digs. They do research. They put them up in their museum. They also do testing on them, DNA testing, all that kind of stuff. But what's interesting is because he believes in this stuff, because he finds this stuff and puts it in his museum. Actually, there's a famous picture you might have seen before of him. This picture here is of him. Now, you'll have these other guys that are the trusted sources at the top of the page of Google. Like this man here, his name is Andy White, who's writing this blog about Joe. And he doesn't even tell truthful information here. Even his first paragraph's not even true. Because Joe is part of the museum that he alleged. Okay, Joe never claims that this is the actual original a femur here. Okay, what he did is he actually recreated one based on some fragments and also from some testimony, from what I understand, of someone who actually did dig it up. And he recreated it based on what the guy said it looked like, and he still had fragments or something. And based off that, he was able to recreate a full leg bone from it. And it was about this size when you took the fragments and figured out what it would be fully. You know what I mean? Like if he had part of it here, and he was able to figure out from that part how big the entire section of the bone would be, and it ended up being 47-inch femur. Now, of course, he had it molded because he was trying to recreate it based off the fragments, right? And such. And as a result, they had to mold it to make it so it would be the size of what it would actually have originally been. But this guy here, this Andy White, basically claims that he bought it at a museum, like as if he just went to a museum and he's trying to trick people. But in reality, he actually works at that museum and he's the one that molded it. So it's just like, what are you doing? He's putting up false information. And this is what they do all the time. They do this all the time. And this Andy White is one of those people. And they were even trying to get him in trouble. They were even trying to get this Joe Taylor in trouble with those who run this part of science. You know, they were trying to literally get him in trouble and get him so he would be like, I don't know. They're really trying to get him in trouble if you read through this here. Just because he took a little sample from some cave. They were trying to, like, you know, take this little technicality and blow it up into something huge. When literally, I would say weekly, people violate this law. It's kind of like breaking the speed limit or something, what we're talking about here. But at any rate, really interesting, though, is some of the stuff he says in this broadcast here, and some of the testimonies he's received from people who've seen eyewitnesses, and also some of the bones that they've dug up as well. I'll just play a little bit here and then comment, all right?
Paleontologists, whether secular unbelievers or Christian creationists. The museum is not a lot of fancy skeletons, which that's great. You know, T-Rex skeleton's great. But if they don't tell you anything about a T-Rex, for instance, if they don't tell you that it was found with things it shouldn't be found with, like T-Rex we were digging up there in Montana, it had several other dinosaurs with it, but it also had crocodile or turtles, crocodiles, and three kinds of plants, three different preservations of plants, and 18 broken T-Rex teeth so far, but no T-Rex.
So what he's saying is that they'll often find things that are not supposed to be with the bones. Like they tell you the story, how it's uniformitarianism and it longs millions of years. But what ends up happening is often in these digs is they find things that don't fit into what's supposed to be there. You're not supposed to be finding turtles and crocodiles with it. And they'll find all these things that are not supposed to be there with it, but they won't tell anybody. It's again, just like the historians that won't tell you what the original historical books say. They completely changed the story because, of course, that stuff ain't true. We don't believe it, so we're not going to put it in modern day history. The same also with modern day archaeology is if they see something that doesn't fit what they're supposed to have there, according to evolution or whatever, then they basically they don't tell you about it. That's pretty much what they do.
So there's a story there. We're not sure what the meaning of it is, but a friend of mine dug up another T-Rex up, I believe, in Montana somewhere. The most insignificant thing was a little movie they showed at the end of the presentation when you went to see the thing. It was a little movie to show. At the end, it listed all the plants that were found with it. And here's a T-Rex. It's a land animal, right? So there's Equisetum, which is giant ferns, big 60 to 90 feet tall, not like that today.
Wow.
There's figs and willow. Well, those things don't grow together. They were all, you know, when you get those ecologies mixed is if you have a tornadic wind or a violent rushing mud and water. And that's what you find all over Wyoming.
That's what, you know, that's the funny thing about it is they look at the evidence and they change the story of what it says. And then you see the same thing even with some of the science experiments like Michelson Morley and the Sagnac experiment is they put in false assumptions initially, and then if their findings don't fit it, they somehow explain them away. Well, like with the Einstein's theory of relativity, they explain away ether. If you know anything about that stuff, when actually Sagnac experiment proves ether exists and actually debunks Einstein's theory of relativity. But because Einstein actually came up with a theory of relativity to explain away the results of the Michelson-Morley experiment because it didn't fit what they were believing should be the case if we're in a universe where the Earth is spinning around the sun, et cetera, et cetera. So things didn't fit. So they just have to debunk things that make it so it will fit. And so they're like science is actually forcing everything into a belief. Like they have a belief already and they're forcing all the proof to fit that belief. And the same is the case with the archaeologists and the historians. You can go look up these historical books from the conquistadors. Go read them. It'll say stuff that you'll be like, what? Because they won't ever tell you that in the historical books today. They're not going to tell you any of that stuff. The same with these archaeologists. This guy is an archaeologist that actually does stuff with trying to find giant skeletons. And he's actually been on these digs with these other guys and saw stuff that's not supposed to be there. It doesn't make sense. But they just explain it away or just don't tell you about it. That's what they do. It's pretty funny, but that's how it works.
North Dakota, South Dakota, Colorado, Texas, you name it. What you find are, in some cases, 10,000 animals of dinosaurs of one species buried, and they had to be buried alive in a giant mud flow. And that thing just goes on forever. There's a dig my friend is doing up in Lemon, South Dakota. The fossil layer there is 3 feet thick, and it stretches for I don't know how far, blocks and blocks, maybe miles. I discovered one in Colorado that I call the half-mile site. And there was a layer of rock 3 feet thick that had been roached up on its side. That it was like cement. 1/3 of it was bone, and the rest of it was rocks. I mean, it's cement. And it went on for a half mile till I ran into federal land, and I quit looking because I don't search on federal land.
So that's pretty amazing. So it doesn't fit the idea of what they claim of uniformitarianism. It actually shows, obviously, some sort of mud flow. Something definitely happened that made thousands of them to be all in one spot. And I've heard of a lot of these stories, especially they'll find these underwater caves with like thousands of them all in one cave because they just got all pushed up into it. And yeah, they just were all in the cave, 1,000 of them, and then they just died all at once, and they just all got buried all right there. Well, that makes total sense, right? It makes total sense, don't it? No, it don't. It makes absolutely no sense. But see, they want you to believe certain things. You know, they got a stamp of approval for what you're taught. You know, that's how it works. So, at any rate, let me know what you guys think in the comment section below, and thanks for watching.